In the parking lot of my graduation at 65, I ran to hug him. He recoiled in disgust. "Don't touch me in front of my parents. You look ridiculous trying to be young." What I didn't know then was that in 2 hours, the life I thought I had would dissolve like sugar in hot water.
Before we continue, comment where you're watching from and subscribe to the channel. We'd love to see how far our stories are reaching.
I froze. The cap and gown suddenly felt like a costume. Behind Richard, I saw his mother Dorothy watching with something that looked like satisfaction. I didn't say a word. I turned, walked to my car, got in, and drove away. My hands didn't shake until I was 3 miles down Highway 12. Then they trembled so badly I had to pull over at a gas station. I sat there for 20 minutes staring at my reflection in the rearview mirror. The tassel from my cap hung at an odd angle. I looked exactly like what Richard said. Ridiculous. I was 65 years old. I had just completed a bachelor's degree in sociology. 4 years of night classes, weekend study groups, papers written at the kitchen table while Richard watched television in the next room. 4 years of, "When are you going to quit this nonsense?" And, "You're embarrassing us," and, "People are asking questions." I started the car and drove home. It took 42 minutes. I counted every single one. The house was empty when I arrived. Richard's car was gone. So was his mother's Lincoln. I walked through the rooms, still wearing the cap and gown, and noticed things I'd stopped seeing years ago. The wedding photo on the mantel, where my smile looked strained. The bookshelf with Richard's business awards but none of my art. The kitchen table where I'd written 47 papers, always clearing everything away before he got home so he wouldn't complain about clutter. I made coffee. I sat at that table. I waited. My phone started ringing at 4:47 p.m. Richard. I let it go to voicemail. It rang again. And again. By 5:15, I'd received 23 calls. I turned the phone face down and stared at it like it was a bomb. At 6:30, I finally answered. He was crying. Not sad crying. Desperate. Gasping. The kind of crying I'd only heard once before, when his father died. Helen, where are you? You need to come back. You need to fix this." "Fix what?" My voice sounded flat, even to my own ears. "The dean interrupted the ceremony. She called your name. She said, 'Helen, I didn't know. I swear to God I didn't know.'" "Know what?" "Dean Laura Bennett." He was barely coherent. Helen, she's my daughter." The coffee in my cup had gone cold. I set it down very carefully. "You don't have a daughter." "I do. I did. Her mother and it was before you. I was 28. I left when Laura was 6. I thought." "You thought what?" "I thought she was gone. Out of my life. I thought I could start over." I stood up, walked to the window, looked out at the backyard where I'd planted tomatoes every spring for 38 years. "How many others, Richard?" Silence. "How many other children do you have?" 3. His voice cracked. 3 total. Laura and 2 others. Sarah and Jennifer. Different mothers. I laughed. It came out wrong, like a cough. "You have 3 daughters you never mentioned." "I was young. I made mistakes. Their mothers, they didn't want me involved. I sent money for a while. Then I stopped. Then there were lawyers. And my mother said it was better to just what? Pretend they didn't exist? To start fresh. Helen, you have to understand. When I met you, I was different. I wanted to be different. You made me—" "Don't." I said it quietly, but he stopped talking. "Don't you dare make this about me." "What did the dean say? When she called my name?" He made a sound like he was choking. "She said congratulations to all the graduates. And then she said there was a special recognition for outstanding achievement. She called your name. Said you'd been selected for the Chancellor's Award for Adult Learners. $15,000 scholarship for graduate studies. And then, he couldn't finish. And then what? And then she said, Helen Mitchell, whose research thesis on intergenerational trauma and parental abandonment has been selected for publication in the Journal of Family Studies. I'm particularly proud of this work, as someone who experienced that abandonment firsthand." And she looked right at me, Helen. Everyone looked at me. I closed my eyes. I'd written that thesis about 3 case studies I'd found in academic journals, anonymous case studies, about fathers who disappeared, about daughters who grew up with holes in their lives shaped like the men who should have loved them. "She knew," I said. "The whole time she knew who I was." My mother collapsed. They had to call an ambulance. She's at St. Mary's Hospital right now. The ceremony stopped. People were taking photos. Someone posted it online. Helen, my entire family knows now. Everyone knows. I thought about Dorothy Mitchell, 91 years old, who'd never liked me, who'd told Richard I was too old for him when we met, even though I was 6 years younger. Dorothy, who'd spent 38 years making small comments about my clothes, my hair, my choices, my failure to give Richard children. Dorothy, who apparently knew all along that Richard already had children. 3 of them. Is she going to live? I asked. They think so. They're running tests. Helen, you need to come to the hospital. We need to figure out what to say. What to say? I repeated. To the family. To people. There's already a reporter who called my phone. Someone from the university paper. Helen, this is going to be everywhere. I looked down at my hands. I was still holding my phone. I'd been holding it so tight my knuckles were white. I got a text message, I said, right before you started calling, from a number I didn't recognize. What did it say? Congratulations, Dr. Mitchell. We should talk. You deserve to know the truth. LB. Richard made a sound like he'd been punched. Don't talk to her. Please, Helen. Don't talk to Laura. She's angry. She's been angry for 40 years. She'll poison you against me. Whatever she says, it's not what? Not true? Not the whole truth. It's complicated. These situations are always complicated. I walked back to the kitchen table, sat down in the same chair where I'd written that thesis. Chapter 3 had been about a girl named Subject C, who tracked down her father when she was 47 years old, who discovered he'd built an entire life that didn't include her, who said in her interview that the hardest part wasn't the absence, it was the replacement, the proof that he was capable of being a father, just not her father. I wondered if Laura Bennett had read my thesis. I wondered if she'd recognized her own life in Subject C. I wondered if that's why she'd chosen to publish it, why she'd chosen to call my name in front of 2,000 people, including the man who'd abandoned her when she was 6 years old. I'm not coming to the hospital, I said. Helen, I'm going to sleep now. We'll talk tomorrow. Tomorrow? Helen, this can't wait until... I hung up, turned off my phone, sat in the dark kitchen in my cap and gown until the streetlights came on. Then I went upstairs, took everything off, folded it neatly on the chair by the window, and got into bed. I didn't cry. I couldn't. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, thinking about a text message from a woman whose name I'd never heard until today. A woman whose father had been sleeping next to me for 38 years. A woman who'd just handed me a thesis I'd written about her life and used it to blow up mine. My phone was still off. I could imagine it lighting up on the kitchen counter. Messages piling up. Richard. Dorothy's other sons, people I hadn't talked to in years, suddenly desperate to know if the rumors were true, if Richard Mitchell, respected businessman, pillar of the community, really had 3 secret daughters he'd never mentioned. I rolled over, looked at Richard's side of the bed. The pillow still had the indent from this morning. He'd kissed me on the forehead before we left for graduation. Said, let's get this over with. I'd thought he meant the ceremony, the crowd, the attention. I'd thought he was uncomfortable because I was older than the other graduates, because people would stare. I didn't know he was terrified that someone from his past might be there, might recognize him, might finally, after 40 years of silence, decide to speak. The clock on the nightstand read 11:47 p.m. In 12 hours, I'd gone from feeling proud to feeling like a fool, from thinking I was starting something to realizing I'd been living inside a lie so big I couldn't see its edges. I closed my eyes. Tomorrow, I'd read that text message. Tomorrow, I'd decide what to do with the truth. But tonight, I just needed the dark. I woke up at 6:14 a.m. to the sound of gravel crunching in the driveway, Richard's car. I heard the engine cut off, then silence. He was sitting out there, trying to decide what to say. I stayed in bed. At 6:35, his key turned in the lock, footsteps on the stairs. The bedroom door opened. He looked like he'd aged 10 years. His eyes were red, his shirt wrinkled, the same clothes from yesterday. You turned off your phone, he said. Yes. I've been calling all night. I know. He stood in the doorway like he was afraid to come closer. My mother's stable. They're keeping her for observation. Low blood pressure, dehydration. They think the shock triggered something. I sat up, pulled the blanket around my shoulders. What did you tell them? At the hospital? Nothing. I said there was a misunderstanding, that someone had confused me with another person. Did they believe you? He looked away. No. I got out of bed, walked past him to the bathroom, brushed my teeth while he stood in the hallway. When I came out, he was sitting on the edge of the bed, head in his hands. "I need to explain," he said. "Go ahead." Laura's mother was named Catherine. We met in college. She got pregnant junior year. We got married at City Hall. I was 22. I didn't know what I was doing. We had Laura, and I tried, Helen. I really tried. But Catherine she was angry all the time. About money, about me working too much, about me not working enough. We fought constantly. When Laura was 6, Catherine filed for divorce, said I was a terrible father, said she didn't want me around Laura anymore. "So you left." She told me to leave. She said Laura was better off without me, that I was confusing her, coming and going. So I sent child support for 3 years, and then Catherine remarried. Some lawyer from Chicago. He wanted to adopt Laura. Catherine said it would be better, a fresh start for everyone, so I signed the papers. I walked to the closet, started pulling out clothes, jeans, a sweater. And the other two? Sarah came 2 years later. Different woman, Jennifer. We dated for about 6 months. She got pregnant, decided to keep the baby, but didn't want me involved. Said I'd already proven I couldn't commit. I sent money until Sarah was 4. Then Jennifer moved to Oregon and I lost track. Lost track, I repeated. And Jennifer, the second Jennifer, not Sarah's mother. I met her when I was 31. We were together for almost 2 years. She got pregnant. We talked about marriage, but then she found out about Laura and Sarah. She said she couldn't trust me. She kept the baby, got a restraining order, and I never saw Jennifer, the daughter, after she was born. I pulled the sweater over my head. 3 daughters. 3 different mothers. And you never told me. I didn't think it mattered. They were part of my past, a past I wasn't proud of. When I met you, I was 42. You were 36. You wanted a fresh start too. You'd just gotten divorced. We both wanted to forget our mistakes and move forward. I told you about my ex-husband, I said quietly. Everything. The affairs, the debt, the lies. I told you all of it. I know. But you didn't tell me about 3 children. He stood up, took a step toward me. Because I was ashamed. Because I knew you'd judge me. Because I wanted you to see me as someone better than I was. I looked at him. Really looked at him. Richard Mitchell, 70 years old. Silver hair. Expensive watch. Face I'd woken up next to for 38 years. A stranger. "Does Dorothy know?" I asked. His face confirmed it before he spoke. "Yes." "The whole time?" "She helped me. With the legal stuff. With the money. She knew I was trying to start over. She supported that." I laughed. It came out bitter. "She supported you lying to me. She thought it was better. That bringing up the past would only cause problems. That you didn't need to know about mistakes I'd made before we even met. 3 daughters aren't mistakes, Richard. They're people. I know that now. But back then, you were a coward. And you still are." His face went red. Don't you dare stand there and judge me when I what? When you wrote a thesis about me. About my life. You interviewed people, Helen. You researched cases. Did it ever occur to you that you might be writing about real people? About situations you didn't understand? I stared at him. I wrote about anonymous case studies published in academic journals. I didn't know Subject C was your daughter. But you wrote about fathers who abandon their children like they're monsters. Like there's no complexity, no circumstances, no reasons. There's never a reason good enough to abandon a child. You don't have children. You don't know what it's like. The words hung in the air between us. I felt something crack inside my chest. Something I didn't know was still holding together. "Get out," I said. "Helen, get out of this room. Get out of this house. Now. This is my house too. Then I'll leave." I grabbed my purse, my phone. Walked downstairs and out the front door. Got in my car and drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just drove. I ended up at a coffee shop near campus. Sat in the corner with a latte I didn't drink, and finally turned on my phone. 89 missed calls. 47 text messages. I scrolled past Richard's name, past numbers I didn't recognize, until I found the one I was looking for. "Congratulations, Dr. Mitchell. We should talk. You deserve to know the truth. LB. I typed back, "Coffee? Today?" The reply came in less than a minute. "Cafe Veritas, 1 p.m., I'll be at the back table." I spent the next 4 hours sitting there, watching students come and go. Kids the age I'd been when I met Richard. The age Laura had been when he signed away his rights to her. The age Sarah and Jennifer probably were now. At 12:55, I walked 3 blocks to Cafe Veritas. It was small, crowded, smelled like espresso and old books. I saw her immediately. Back table, corner seat, dark hair pulled into a bun, glasses, cardigan. She looked up when I walked in, and I saw Richard's eyes, the exact same shade of gray. "Helen," she said, not a question. "Laura." She gestured to the empty chair. "Thank you for coming." I sat. Up close, I could see more of him, the shape of her mouth, the way she held her shoulders. But there was something else, too. Something harder. Like she'd been carved out of stone instead of raised with love. "I read your thesis," she said. 3 times. The first time I didn't recognize myself. The second time I did. The third time, I realized you had no idea who you were writing about. "I didn't," I said. "The case studies were anonymized. I selected them based on data patterns. I never knew. Subject C, that's me. Age 6 when father left. 47 when I tracked him down. Discovered he'd built a new life, new wife, no children with her. The interview quote about replacement, that was mine." I felt cold. That journal article was published 8 years ago. I gave that interview 10 years ago, to a doctoral student researching family trauma. I was angry then. I'm less angry now. But when I saw your name on the graduate registry, and I saw your thesis topic, and I saw who you were married to, she smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I knew exactly what I was going to do. You used my work to expose him. I used your work to tell the truth. There's a difference. A waitress came over. Laura ordered an Americano. I ordered nothing. When the waitress left, Laura pulled a folder from her bag. "Sarah and Jennifer want to meet you," she said. "I've been in contact with them for 6 years. We found each other through one of those DNA websites. Turns out we all did the test hoping to find family. We found each other instead." She opened the folder. 3 photographs. 3 women. All with Richard's eyes. Sarah's 42. She's a nurse in Portland. Married, 2 kids. She didn't know Richard's name until we connected. Her mother only told her that her father wasn't ready to be a parent. And Jennifer, 38, high school art teacher in Denver, single. Her mother died 5 years ago. She grew up thinking her father was dead. That's what her mother told her, that he died in a car accident before she was born. I looked at the photos. 3 women who'd grown up without a father. 3 women who'd probably spent their entire lives wondering why they weren't enough to make him stay. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. Laura leaned back. "Because you deserve to know who you married. And because I want you to understand that what happened yesterday wasn't about hurting you. It was about making sure he couldn't hide anymore. For 40 years, he got to pretend we didn't exist. He got to build a life where his past didn't matter. Where his mistakes were erased. I decided that was over. He said you were angry. I was. I am. But not at you." She paused. "My mother told me stories about him. How charming he was. How convincing. How he made her believe he wanted to be a family. Right up until the moment he left. She said the hardest part was that he didn't fight. When she filed for divorce, he just signed the papers. When her new husband wanted to adopt me, he just signed those papers too. Like I was a subscription he was canceling. I thought about Richard sitting on the bed this morning, saying he'd tried. Saying Catherine had pushed him away. I thought about how easy it is to rewrite history when the other person isn't there to contradict you. "There's something else you should know," Laura said. She pulled out another document. Bank statements. Old ones, photocopied, highlighted in yellow. "He stopped paying child support 6 months before my mother remarried. He told you 3 years, right? He told you he sent money until I was adopted?" I nodded. He lied. "He stopped when I was 6. My mother struggled. We lived in a 1-bedroom apartment. She worked 2 jobs. She asked him for help dozens of times. He ignored her. Then when she finally remarried, he acted like he was doing her a favor by signing the adoption papers. Like he was being noble." She pulled out more papers. Letters. Emails. Sarah's mother took him to court twice for unpaid support. He settled for half of what he owed. And Jennifer's mother. He never sent a single dollar. Not one. The restraining order wasn't because she didn't trust him. It was because he showed up at her apartment drunk, screaming about how she'd ruined his life. I felt sick. "He's not a man who made mistakes when he was young," Laura said quietly. "He's a man who abandoned 3 children and then rewrote the story so he could sleep at night. And when he met you, He saw an opportunity to be the man he wanted to be instead of the man he actually was. She closed the folder, slid it across the table. You can keep this. Copies of everything. I have more if you need them. I stared at the folder. I didn't touch it. What do you want from me? I asked. Nothing. I just wanted you to know. What you do with that information is up to you. She stood, put money on the table for her coffee. Sarah and Jennifer are coming to Madison next weekend. We're having dinner at my house. You're welcome to join us. No pressure. But if you want to know the real story, the one he'll never tell you, we'll be there. She handed me a business card. Laura Bennett, Ph.D., Dean of Social Sciences. Office number, cell number, email. I'm sorry you got caught in this, she said. But I'm not sorry I did it. She walked out. I sat there for another hour, staring at the folder. When I finally opened it, the first thing I saw was a letter from Richard to Laura's mother, dated 1984. It was short, 3 sentences. I can't do this anymore. I'm not cut out to be a father. Please don't contact me again. Laura had been 6 years old. I drove home in a fog. When I pulled into the driveway, Richard's car was still there. I walked in with the folder under my arm. He was sitting at the kitchen table, exactly where I'd been the night before. Where were you? He asked. Having coffee with your daughter. His face went white. Helen, whatever she told you. I dropped the folder on the table. Read it. All of it. And then pack a bag. You're staying somewhere else tonight. This is my house. No, I said. This is Dorothy's house. You told me we'd buy it together, but I saw the deed last year when we refinanced. It's in her name. Everything here is in her name. You've been letting me believe I had a home when really I've been living in your mother's rental property for 38 years. I walked upstairs, started pulling his clothes out of the closet. He followed me, still talking, but I couldn't hear him anymore. There was a ringing in my ears, loud and constant, like tinnitus made of rage. When I came back downstairs with his suitcase, he was holding one of the bank statements. His hands were shaking. She had no right to give you these, he said. She had every right. She's your daughter. She's trying to destroy me. No, I said. She's trying to make you tell the truth. There's a difference. I opened the front door, set the suitcase outside. Go to your mother's house. Go to a hotel. I don't care. But you're not sleeping here tonight. He looked at me like I was a stranger. Maybe I was. Maybe I'd been a stranger to myself for 38 years. We'll talk tomorrow, he said, when you've calmed down. I am calm, I said. And I was, completely, eerily calm. I'll call you when I'm ready to talk. Until then, leave me alone. He walked out. I closed the door behind him, locked it, went to the kitchen and made coffee. Real coffee, strong and black. Then I opened the folder again and read everything Laura had given me. Every letter, every bank statement, every email, every court document. By the time I finished, it was 11 p.m. I picked up my phone and sent a text to the number on Laura's business card. I'll be there next weekend. What should I bring? The response came immediately. Just yourself, that's enough. I set the phone down, walked upstairs, got ready for bed, lay down in the same spot where I'd slept the night before. But this time, when I closed my eyes, I didn't see Richard's face. I saw 3 women I'd never met, 3 daughters he'd left behind, 3 people who deserved better, and I thought, I deserved better too. Richard called 16 times the next day. I didn't answer. He came to the house twice. I didn't open the door. On the 3rd day, Dorothy called. Helen, this is ridiculous. You're acting like a child. I was sitting at the kitchen table drinking coffee, looking through the folder Laura had given me. Am I? Richard made mistakes. We all make mistakes. You can't throw away 38 years of marriage because of something that happened before you even met. He lied to me for 38 years, Dorothy. Every single day. He protected you from unnecessary pain. There's a difference. I almost laughed. You knew. The whole time you knew he had 3 daughters, and you never said a word. What would have been the point? They weren't part of his life anymore. Telling you would have only caused problems. Problems for who? For Richard? Or for you? Silence. Then, I don't appreciate your tone. And I don't appreciate being lied to by my husband and my mother-in-law for nearly 4 decades. But here we are. If you don't let Richard come home, people will talk. They're already talking. That scene at graduation is all over social media. Someone posted a video. The university is calling it a personal family matter, but everyone knows what happened. If you leave him now, you'll look vindictive, bitter, like you're punishing him for his past. Maybe I am. Helen, I have to go, Dorothy. I'll talk to you when I'm ready. I hung up, blocked her number. Then I blocked Richard's number too. I needed silence. I needed space to think. The house felt different without him. Bigger, emptier, but also lighter, like a weight had been removed from the air. I walked through rooms I'd cleaned for 38 years and realized I didn't recognize most of the furniture. Dorothy had chosen it. A housewarming gift, she'd called it when Richard and I moved in. Couch, chairs, dining table, even the bed, all from her, all tasteful and expensive and completely impersonal. I'd never bought furniture, never painted a wall, never changed anything because it was Dorothy's house, and we were just living here until we could afford our own place. 38 years of just living here. On Thursday, I drove to campus, parked in the visitor lot, walked to the social sciences building. Laura's office was on the 3rd floor, corner suite, door half open. I knocked. Come in. She looked up from her computer, smiled slightly when she saw me. Helen, I wasn't expecting you until Saturday. I wanted to ask you something. Sit. I sat in the chair across from her desk. The office was neat, organized, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves packed with academic texts. On one wall, framed photographs, Laura at various ages, graduation photos, a woman who must have been her mother, no pictures of Richard. Why did you become a sociologist? I asked. She leaned back in her chair. Because I wanted to understand why people do what they do. Why some parents stay and some leave. Why some families survive trauma and others fall apart. Why a man can walk away from a 6-year-old daughter and then sleep peacefully for 40 years. Did you find answers? Some. Not all. Mostly I found more questions. I looked at the bookshelves, saw my thesis title on one spine. When did you realize I'd written about you? The day I approved the graduate publication list. I saw your name, saw the thesis title, thought it was a coincidence. Then I read it. Recognized Subject C immediately. Checked your registration information. Saw you were married to Richard Mitchell. And I thought, she paused. I thought she has no idea. She's living with him, sleeping next to him, and she has no idea who he really is. You could have told me privately. I could have. But then what? You'd ask him about it. He'd deny it or twist it or make me sound crazy. You'd believe him because you've believed him for 38 years, and nothing would change. So you humiliated him publicly instead. I exposed him publicly. There's a difference. I stood, walked to the window, looked out at the campus quad, students walking between classes. So young, so certain their lives would turn out differently. I found something in the house, I said. In his study, a file box in the back of the closet, financial documents, tax returns from before we got married. Laura waited. He claimed 3 dependents in 1986. You, Sarah, and Jennifer. Took the full deduction even though he wasn't paying child support. Filed as head of household even though he was single and living alone. Got a tax refund of $4,200. Let me guess. He never sent any of that money to our mothers. He used it as down payment on a car. I found the receipt. 1986 BMW. He's told me dozens of times how he worked so hard to save for that car. How proud he was. How it was a symbol of his success. Laura's face didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. He stole from us to buy a car. Yes. Does he know you found it? Not yet. She stood, walked to the same window where I was standing. We stood there side by side, looking out at the same view. Sarah and Jennifer are flying in Friday night, she said. We're meeting at my house Saturday at 6 p.m. We're going to cook dinner together, drink wine, and tell stories about growing up without a father. You're still welcome to join us. What if I bring the tax returns? Then we'll add tax fraud to the list of his accomplishments. I turned to look at her, really look at her. She was 46 years old, successful, accomplished, dean of an entire college at a major university, and still, somewhere in her eyes, I could see the 6-year-old girl who'd watched her father walk away. I'm sorry, I said. For what he did to you, for not knowing, for writing about your pain without realizing it was yours. You didn't know. I should have. I lived with him for 38 years. I should have seen who he was. He's good at hiding. That's his skill. Making people see what he wants them to see. She paused. My mother told me once that the most dangerous liars are the ones who believe their own lies. Richard doesn't think he abandoned us. He thinks he made a difficult choice. He doesn't think he stole from us. He thinks he deserved that tax refund. He doesn't think he lied to you. He thinks he protected you. How do you live with that? Knowing he'll never admit what he did? I don't need him to admit it. I know what happened. Sarah and Jennifer know what happened. And now you know what happened. That's enough. I looked back out the window. Saturday at 6? Saturday at 6. I drove home. Richard's car was in the driveway. He was sitting on the front steps. We need to talk, he said. Not yet. Helen, I've been staying at a motel for 4 days. My mother's house has no guest room. I'm 70 years old. I need to come home. This isn't your home. It's your mother's house. Semantics. Facts. I walked past him, unlocked the door. He followed me inside. I'm not leaving until we talk about this, he said. Fine. Talk. He sat at the kitchen table. I stayed standing. Laura is poisoning you against me, he said. Everything she's told you is twisted, out of context. She's angry because I wasn't perfect, but she doesn't understand the circumstances. Did you claim 3 dependents on your 1986 tax return? He stopped. What? Your 1986 tax return. Did you claim Laura, Sarah, and Jennifer as dependents? That was legal. I was their father. Were you paying child support? That's not. The law says if you're the biological parent. Were you paying child support, Richard? Yes or no? Not at that moment, but I had paid. So you stole from them. You claimed them as dependents to get a tax refund, but you weren't supporting them. You took money from the government that was supposed to help children, and you used it to buy a BMW. His face went red. Who told you that? Laura. She's been going through my private documents. That's illegal. I found them. In your study. In a file box labeled Tax Records 1985-1990. I was looking for our current tax information because I'm trying to figure out what I'm entitled to if we divorce. The word hung in the air. Divorce. You're not divorcing me, he said. You're upset. You're angry. But you'll calm down and realize that our marriage is more important than mistakes I made 40 years ago. Is that what you think? That this is about old mistakes? What else would it be about? It's about who you are, Richard. Not who you were. Who you are right now. A man who lies. A man who hides. A man who rewrites history so he can feel good about himself. You didn't tell me about your daughters because you thought it was better for me. You didn't tell me because it was better for you. That's not fair. You want to talk about fair? Let's talk about Sarah growing up thinking her father didn't want her. Let's talk about Jennifer being told her father was dead. Let's talk about Laura watching you sign away your rights to her like she was a piece of property you were tired of owning. I was young. I didn't know what I was doing. You were 28 when you left Laura, old enough to know better. You were 30 when Sarah was born, 33 when Jennifer was born. At what age exactly does a man become responsible for his choices? He stood, walked toward me. I love you. I've loved you for 38 years. Doesn't that count for anything? I don't know if you're capable of love, Richard. I think you're capable of needing, of wanting, of taking. But love? Love requires honesty. It requires showing someone who you really are and trusting them to stay. You never did that. You showed me a version of yourself, a character you created, and I fell in love with someone who doesn't exist. That's not true. Then tell me something true, right now, something you've never told me, something real. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I don't know what you want me to say. That's the problem, I said quietly. You don't know how to tell the truth even when you're trying. He left. I didn't watch him go. I sat at the table and called a divorce attorney whose number I'd found online, made an appointment for Monday morning. Then I went upstairs, pulled out a suitcase, and started packing for the weekend. Saturday at 6 p.m., I stood on Laura's front porch holding a bottle of wine and a folder full of tax documents. The door opened before I could knock. Helen? Laura smiled. Come in. The house was small, warm, filled with the smell of garlic and tomatoes. In the kitchen, 2 women turned to look at me. One tall with dark hair, one shorter with Richard's exact smile. Sarah? Laura said, gesturing to the tall one. Jennifer, pointing to the shorter one. This is Helen. Sarah stepped forward first, held out her hand. Thank you for coming. Jennifer just stared at me. You're younger than I expected. I'm 65. He's 70. I thought he'd marry someone his own age. Or older. Like my mom was older than him. She said it without malice, just observation. I was 27 when we met, I said. He was 42. Same age my mom was when she met him, Sarah said quietly. She was 27, he was 30. She thought he'd grow up. He didn't. Laura poured wine. We sat in the living room, the four of us, women who'd been connected by one man's choices. And slowly, carefully, we started to talk. Sarah told stories about searching for her father's name online, finding nothing, doing a DNA test hoping to find family, finding Laura instead. Jennifer talked about her mother's funeral, how she'd cleaned out the apartment and found a shoebox full of letters. Letters from Richard, all from 1987, all saying he couldn't be a father, he wasn't ready, she should stop contacting him. Laura showed me photos of her mother. Catherine. Beautiful, tired, holding 6-year-old Laura in a park somewhere. This was taken the week he left, she said. My mom kept it on her dresser until she died. I asked her once why she kept it. She said it reminded her that she'd survived. I showed them the tax returns. We sat there in Laura's living room, passing around documents that proved their father had claimed them for money while refusing to support them with love. He used us, Jennifer said. Not angry, just factual. We were deductions to him, line items. You were more than that to your mothers, I said. You were everything. Sarah started crying, not loud, just quiet tears running down her face. I always wondered if it was my fault. If I'd been different, better, maybe he would have stayed. It wasn't your fault, Laura said. It was never our fault. We talked until midnight, drank 2 more bottles of wine, ate pasta that Laura had made from scratch. And somewhere in those hours, something shifted. We weren't victims anymore. We were witnesses. Testifying to each other about the same man who'd failed us in different ways. When I left, Laura walked me to my car. What are you going to do? She asked. Divorce him. Keep the house if I can. If not, find somewhere else. And then? I don't know. I have a scholarship for graduate school. Maybe I'll use it. She smiled. You should. You're a good researcher. Your thesis was solid, even if it was about me. Especially because it was about you, I said. You deserve to have your story told. I drove home. The house was dark. Empty. I walked through it one more time, turning on lights, looking at furniture that had never been mine. And I thought, it's time to find out who I am when I'm not trying to be someone's wife. On Monday, I filed for divorce. The attorney's name was Patricia Moreno. She was 52, sharp-eyed, and had a reputation for winning cases against wealthy men who thought they could hide assets. Laura had recommended her. Tell me everything, Patricia said, pen poised over a legal pad. I told her. The 3 daughters, the lies, the tax fraud, the house in Dorothy's name, 38 years of believing I was building a life when really I'd been living in someone else's property, married to someone else's version of the truth. When I finished, Patricia set down her pen. This is one of the clearest cases I've seen in years. He's been committing financial fraud, potentially for decades. The house issue is complicated, but Wisconsin is a marital property state. Even if the deed is in his mother's name, if you've been living there as your marital home, you may have rights. What about the tax fraud? The statute of limitations has passed on the 1986 returns, but it establishes a pattern of behavior. We can use it to argue for forensic accounting of all marital assets. If he's been lying about his daughters, he's likely been lying about money too. She pulled out a calculator, started running numbers. 38 years of marriage. You said he has a pension from his business? Yes, he sold his company in 2015. The pension pays $6,400 a month. And you have no retirement of your own? I worked part-time until 2010. Bookkeeping, administrative work. Nothing that qualified for a pension. I stopped working when Dorothy had her first hip surgery. Richard asked me to help take care of her. Patricia wrote something down. So you provided elder care for his mother while he built his career and retirement. I didn't think of it that way. The court will. Wisconsin law recognizes non-financial contributions to a marriage. Caregiving, homemaking, supporting a spouse's career. All of that has value. She looked up. I'm going to be honest with you, Helen. This could get ugly. He's going to fight. Men like Richard always fight. They don't like being exposed. Let him fight. There's something else you should know. If we pursue this aggressively, forensic accounting, depositions, discovery, his relationship with his daughters is going to become public record. Court documents are accessible. Reporters could pick it up. It could damage his reputation beyond repair. Good. She smiled slightly. Just wanted to make sure you understand the consequences. I understand perfectly. I left her office with a stack of forms to fill out and a court date scheduled for preliminary motions. Drove to the bank and opened my own account. Transferred half of everything in our joint accounts, $43,000. Left him a note in the other half. Marital property division. See you in court. That afternoon, Richard showed up at the house. He had a key, but I'd changed the locks. He knocked for 5 minutes before calling my cell phone. "Let me in," he said. "We need to talk about this." "Talk to my attorney." I gave him Patricia's number and hung up. He called back immediately. "You changed the locks? On my house?" "Your mother's house. And yes, I changed the locks. You don't live here anymore." "Helen, this is insane. You can't just kick me out of my own home." "Watch me." I hung up again, turned off my phone, went upstairs and started going through his things. Every drawer, every closet, every box. Looking for what? I wasn't sure. Just looking. In the back of his study closet, behind the tax returns, I found another box. Smaller. Unlabeled. Inside, 3 baby books. Pink covers, partially filled out. Laura Mitchell, born April 3rd, 1978. First word, Dada. First steps, 13 months. And then the entries stopped. She was 18 months old in the last entry. Sarah Mitchell, born January 12th, 1982. First word, ball. First steps, 11 months. Last entry, 2 years old. Jennifer Mitchell, born June 8th, 1986. Only 3 entries. Birth weight, birth length. A single photo of her as a newborn, eyes closed, wrapped in a hospital blanket. He'd kept them. All these years he'd kept these baby books in a box in the back of a closet. Never mentioned them. Never looked at them. Just kept them like evidence of a crime he couldn't quite bring himself to destroy. I took photos of every page, sent them to Laura. She called me 30 seconds later. "Where did you find these?" "His study. Back of the closet." Silence. Then, "He kept my baby book. He kept all 3. Why would he?" She stopped. "He wanted to remember. Some part of him wanted to remember we existed. Or he wanted evidence that he tried, that he was there. For a while. The entries in mine stop at 18 months. That's 6 months before he left. He stopped documenting you before he stopped being your father." More silence. Then, "Sarah and Jennifer need to see this. I'll send you the photos." "Helen, thank you for finding these, for not destroying them. They're not mine to destroy. They're yours." I hung up, kept searching, found more documents. Old letters from Catherine, Laura's mother, begging for child support. Letters from Sarah's mother, threatening legal action. A restraining order from Jennifer's mother, dated 1987, citing threatening behavior and harassment. I photographed everything, created a digital folder, backed it up in 3 places. Then I called Patricia. "I found more," I said. "A lot more. Bring it to my office tomorrow. All of it." That night, Richard came back with Dorothy. I heard them arguing on the front porch. "She can't do this," Richard was saying. "Tell her she can't do this." Dorothy knocked. Heavy, authoritative knocks. "Helen, open this door. We need to discuss this like adults." I opened the door, stood in the doorway, didn't invite them in. "You've made your point," Dorothy said. "You're angry, you feel betrayed. But this has gone far enough. Richard is willing to go to counseling, to work on the marriage. You need to be reasonable." "Reasonable?" I repeated. "Yes, reasonable. Mature. You can't throw away a marriage because of mistakes he made before you even met him. He committed tax fraud. He abandoned 3 children. He lied to me for 38 years. Those aren't mistakes, Dorothy. They're choices. Everyone has a past, Helen. Everyone has things they're not proud of. You're not perfect either. You're right. I'm not perfect. But I've never abandoned a child. I've never lied about who I am for 4 decades. And I've never enabled my son to do those things while pretending it was for the best." Her face went cold. "What are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything. I'm stating facts. You knew about his daughters. You helped him hide them. You chose your son's comfort over 3 children's right to have a father. That makes you complicit." How dare you? How dare I? I laughed. How dare you? You watched me clean your house, cook your meals, drive you to doctor's appointments for 15 years. You let me believe I was part of this family when really I was just unpaid help. Did you ever once think about telling me the truth? Did you ever once consider that I deserved to know who I married? Richard is a good man. No, Dorothy. Richard is your son. There's a difference. I closed the door, locked it, listened to them argue for another 10 minutes before they finally left. The next morning, I met with Patricia again, showed her everything I'd found, the baby books, the letters, the restraining order. This is better than I hoped, she said. We can demonstrate a pattern of abandonment, financial irresponsibility, and deception spanning 40 years. The baby books are especially powerful. They show he was emotionally involved enough to document their early lives, which makes his later abandonment even more indefensible. Can we use this to prove he's been dishonest about other assets? Absolutely. If he lied about 3 children, the court will question everything else he's claimed. We'll request full financial disclosure going back to the beginning of your marriage. Bank accounts, investments, property, everything. She pulled out a timeline. Started mapping out the next 6 months. Discovery, depositions, mediation, possibly trial. He's going to offer you a settlement, she said. Something designed to make you go away quietly. Don't take it. Not the first offer, not even the second. Men like Richard lowball because they assume women will accept whatever's offered just to avoid conflict. I'm not avoiding anything. Good, because this is going to be a fight. I left her office and drove to campus. Found Laura in her office, staring at her computer screen. When she looked up, her eyes were red. I called my mother's sister this morning, she said. My Aunt Margaret. Told her about the baby book. She started crying. Said my mother would have wanted me to have it. Said my mother talked about that book sometimes. Wondered what happened to it. Thought he'd thrown it away. He kept it, I said. He kept all 3. Why, though? Why keep them if he was just going to pretend we didn't exist? I sat down across from her desk. I don't know. Maybe some part of him knew what he was doing was wrong. Maybe he kept them as proof that he'd tried. Or maybe he kept them so he could look at them sometimes and feel like a father without actually having to be one. That's sick. Yes. She closed her laptop. Sarah wants to know if she can have hers. The baby book. Is that possible? It's yours. All 3 of them. They were never his to keep. Tell Sarah and Jennifer I'll mail them this week. Helen, she stopped. Started again. Why are you doing this? Fighting him, I mean. You could have just divorced him quietly, taken a settlement, moved on. Because you were 6 years old when he left. And Sarah was 4 when he stopped sending money. And Jennifer never even got to meet him. And none of you deserved that. And if I let him get away with lying to me the way he lied to your mothers, then I'm no better than he is. She smiled, sad, but genuine. He really underestimated you. He underestimated all of us. I spent the next 2 weeks gathering documentation. Every receipt, every bank statement, every piece of paper that proved where our money had gone for 38 years. Patricia was right. There were discrepancies, large ones, transfers to accounts I didn't know about, payments to consulting fees that had no documentation, a safety deposit box I'd never heard of. When we finally got access to his financial records through Discovery, Patricia called me with an update. He's been hiding money for years. We found 3 accounts in his mother's name that he's the signatory on. Total value, $340,000. He's been transferring money there since 2010, right around the time you stopped working to take care of Dorothy. He was stealing from me while I was taking care of his mother. Essentially, yes. Wisconsin law considers marital assets to be jointly owned regardless of whose name they're in. He'll have to disclose everything. What happens now? Now we depose him, put him under oath, ask him about every account, every transfer, every lie. And we see how many times he's willing to commit perjury before he decides to settle. The deposition was scheduled for 3 weeks later. In the meantime, I enrolled in graduate school, used the Chancellor's Award Scholarship to register for classes. Introduction to Advanced Sociological Theory. Research Methods. Family Systems and Trauma. Laura was teaching 2 of my classes. When I walked into the first seminar, she looked up from her notes and smiled. Welcome to graduate school, Helen. I sat in the back row, surrounded by students half my age, students who looked at me with curiosity, maybe pity, maybe respect. I couldn't tell, but I didn't care. For the first time in 38 years, I was doing something for myself, building something that couldn't be taken away. learning something that would make me more than Richard Mitchell's wife. The night before Richard's deposition, Laura called. "Are you ready for tomorrow?" "I think so." Patricia prepared me. "I know what to expect. Sarah and Jennifer wanted me to tell you something. They said thank you. For fighting. For not letting him rewrite history. For making him face what he did. Tell them they're welcome. And tell them I'm not done yet." "What do you mean?" "Tomorrow, Patricia's going to ask him about the baby books, about why he kept them, about what he told himself all these years when he looked at them, and he's going to have to answer under oath. And whatever he says, it's going to be part of the public record. Forever." "Good," Laura said. "Let everyone know who he really is." I hung up, made tea, sat at the kitchen table in the house that still didn't feel like mine, and I thought, tomorrow, Richard Mitchell is going to tell the truth. Not because he wants to, but because he'll have no other choice, and that felt like victory. The deposition room was smaller than I expected. Gray carpet, fluorescent lights, a table with 2 pitchers of water and too many empty glasses. Richard sat on one side with his attorney, a man named Douglas Harper who looked expensive. I sat on the other side with Patricia. A court reporter sat at the end, fingers poised over the stenography machine. Richard wouldn't look at me. He stared at the table, at his hands, at the wall. Anywhere but my direction. "State your name for the record," the court reporter said. "Richard Allen Mitchell." "And you understand you're under oath?" "Yes." Patricia leaned forward, smiled pleasantly. "Good morning, Mr. Mitchell. I'm going to ask you some questions about your financial history and personal history as it relates to this marriage. Please answer truthfully and completely." "Of course. How many children do you have?" He hesitated, glanced at Douglas, who nodded slightly. 3. "Can you name them?" "Laura Bennett, Sarah Mitchell, Jennifer Mitchell." "And where do these children appear on your tax returns for the years you were married to Helen?" Another hesitation. "They don't." "They don't appear at all? Not as dependents, not as recipients of child support payments, nowhere?" "No." "But you did claim them as dependents in earlier years, correct? Before you married Helen?" Yes, for a few years." "How many years specifically?" "I don't remember exactly." Patricia slid a document across the table. "This is your 1986 tax return. Do you recognize it?" He looked at it. His jaw tightened. "Yes, you claimed 3 dependents that year. Laura, Sarah, and Jennifer. Is that correct?" "Yes." "And how much child support did you pay in 1986? "I don't recall the exact amount." "Let me refresh your memory. According to court records from family court in Dane County, you paid $0 in child support in 1986. Does that sound accurate?" Douglas interrupted. "Objection. This is harassment. Tax matters from 40 years ago are not relevant to the current divorce proceedings." Patricia didn't blink. "I'm establishing a pattern of financial dishonesty, Your Honor." Mitchell claimed dependents he wasn't supporting in order to receive tax refunds. This speaks directly to his credibility regarding current asset disclosure. The court reporter made a note. Patricia continued. "Mitchell, what did you do with the tax refund you received in 1986? "I don't remember." "You received $4,200. You don't remember what you did with $4,200. It was a long time ago." She slid another document across. "This is a receipt for a 1986 BMW 325i. Down payment, $4,200. Buyer, Richard Mitchell. Does this refresh your memory?" He stared at the receipt. "I bought a car." "You bought a car with money you received by falsely claiming you were supporting 3 children you'd abandoned." Objection. Withdrawn. "Mitchell, when did you tell Helen about your 3 daughters?" "I didn't." "You never told her?" "No. In 38 years of marriage, you never once mentioned that you had 3 children from previous relationships?" "No." "Why not?" He finally looked up, met my eyes for the first time. "Because I was ashamed." "Ashamed of what?" "Of leaving them, of not being a good father, of failing." "But you weren't ashamed enough to tell your wife the truth?" "I thought it would hurt her. I thought it was better if she didn't know." "Better for her, or better for you?" Douglas stood. Objection. Argumentative. Sustained. Move on, Ms. Moreno. Patricia pulled out another document. "Mitchell, do you recognize this house deed?" He glanced at it. "Yes." "Whose name is on the deed?" "My mother's, Dorothy Mitchell." "But you and Helen have lived in this house for 38 years, correct?" "Yes." Did you ever tell Helen that the house was in your mother's name? I don't think it came up. It didn't come up in 38 years. You never discussed who owned your home? Helen knew my mother helped us with the down payment. Helped you? Or bought it outright and allowed you to live there? She bought it. We were going to buy it from her eventually. Did you have a contract? A payment plan? Any legal agreement that you would purchase the house? It was an informal arrangement. An informal arrangement that lasted 38 years, during which time Helen believed she was living in her marital home, when in fact she was living in your mother's property with no legal ownership rights whatsoever. We were going to handle it eventually. When, exactly? After 40 years? 50? Douglas objected again. Patricia moved on. Let's talk about your mother's accounts. You're listed as co-owner on 3 accounts in her name. Is that correct? Richard's face went pale. Yes. What is the total value of those accounts? I don't know exactly. According to bank statements subpoenaed last week, the total is $340,000. Does that sound right? If the statements say so. And when did you start transferring money into these accounts? I don't remember. Let me help. The first transfer was in March 2010, $5,000, then another $5,000 in April, then monthly transfers of varying amounts for the next 14 years. Do you remember now? He didn't answer. What happened in 2010, Mr. Mitchell? What changed that made you start hiding money in your mother's accounts? I wasn't hiding anything. Then why didn't you tell Helen about these accounts? They were my mother's accounts. But you're a co-owner. You make deposits. You have full access. These are marital assets, Mr. Mitchell, money earned during your marriage that should have been jointly disclosed. Yet Helen had no idea they existed until our discovery process. I was helping my mother. She's elderly. She needed... Your mother is 91 years old and receives $4,800 per month from your father's pension plus Social Security. She owns her home outright. She has no debt. Why did she need $340,000 in hidden accounts? He didn't answer. Patricia pulled out another document. The baby books. I'd given her photos of every page. Mitchell, do you recognize this? He looked at the photo. His hands started shaking. Yes. What is it? A baby book. Whose baby book? Laura's. Your daughter Laura, who you abandoned at age 6? I didn't abandon. I left the marriage. Her mother didn't want me involved. According to letters from Laura's mother, Catherine, letters we've subpoenaed, she begged you for child support 47 times over a period of 3 years. She asked you to visit Laura, to call, to send birthday cards. Does that sound like a mother who didn't want you involved? She made it difficult. How specifically? She was angry. She poisoned Laura against me. Laura was 6 years old when you signed away your parental rights. How much poisoning could a 6-year-old have received? He didn't answer. You kept this baby book for 40 years. Why? I don't know. You don't know why you kept a record of your daughter's first words and first steps hidden in a closet for 4 decades? I guess I wanted to remember. Remember what? That I tried. That I was there. For a while. The last entry in this book is when Laura was 18 months old. You left when she was 6. That's 4.5 years with no documentation. Did you stop being her father at 18 months, Mr. Mitchell? Or did you just stop pretending to care? Objection. Douglas was on his feet. This is badgering. Moreno is testifying instead of questioning. Withdrawn. Patricia pulled out 2 more photos. These are the baby books for Sarah and Jennifer. You kept those too. Why? Richard's hands were shaking harder now. I don't know. You kept records of 3 children you claimed not to care about. You documented their early lives and then abandoned them. You lied about them for 38 years. And you expect this court to believe you've been honest about money? I've been honest. Have you? Because we've found discrepancies in your financial disclosures. Accounts you didn't mention. Transfers you can't explain. Property in your mother's name that you've been using as your own. And all of it follows the same pattern as your relationship with your daughters. You take what you want, hide what's inconvenient, and lie when questioned. Douglas stood again. This is outrageous. My client has been forthcoming. Your client committed tax fraud in 1986 by claiming dependents he wasn't supporting. He's been hiding marital assets in his mother's accounts since 2010. He lied to his wife for 38 years about having 3 children. If that's your definition of forthcoming, counselor, I'd hate to see what dishonesty looks like. The room went silent. Richard was staring at his hands. They were shaking so badly he had to grip the edge of the table. Patricia gathered her documents. One more question, Mr. Mitchell. When Helen filed for divorce, you told her she was being unreasonable, that she should forgive you for mistakes you made before you even met. Do you still believe that? He looked up, looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in weeks. I don't know, he said quietly. I don't know what I believe anymore. Then let me tell you what I believe. I believe you're a man who spent his entire adult life running from consequences. You ran from 3 daughters. You ran from financial responsibilities. You ran from the truth. And when you met Helen, you thought you'd finally outrun your past, but you hadn't. You just dragged her into it without telling her. And now she's the one paying the price. That's not... I never wanted to hurt her. But you did. You hurt her the same way you hurt Laura and Sarah and Jennifer, by making yourself comfortable at their expense, by rewriting history so you could sleep at night, by choosing your own peace over their right to know the truth. Richard put his head in his hands. His shoulders shook. He was crying. Douglas called for a recess. Patricia agreed. We stepped outside into the hallway. That was brutal, I said. That was necessary. He's going to settle now. No way he goes to trial after that. How can you be sure? Because men like Richard only fight when they think they can win. He just realized he can't. We went back in after 15 minutes. Richard's eyes were red. Douglas had a sheet of paper in front of him. My client would like to discuss settlement terms, Douglas said. Patricia smiled. I'm listening. They went back and forth for an hour. I sat there in silence, watching Richard squirm every time Patricia mentioned the baby books or the hidden accounts or the tax fraud. Finally, Douglas slid a piece of paper across the table. This is our offer. Patricia read it, showed it to me. I read it 3 times to make sure I understood. Richard would give me 60% of his pension, $3,840 a month for life, half of all investment accounts, including the ones in Dorothy's name. The house, he would buy it from Dorothy and transfer deed to me, $50,000 cash settlement, all legal fees paid in exchange. I would agree not to pursue tax fraud charges, agree to a confidentiality clause, no public discussion of his daughters or hidden assets, agree to no-fault divorce, no assignment of blame. I looked at Patricia. The confidentiality clause is negotiable. We can modify it to exclude discussions with his daughters and your attorney, but you won't be able to give interviews or write a book. I don't want to give interviews. I just want to tell the truth when asked. Then we can work with that. I looked at Richard. He was still staring at the table. One more thing, I said. I want him to write letters to Laura, Sarah, and Jennifer, acknowledging what he did, apologizing, not because it will fix anything, but because they deserve to hear it. Douglas started to object, but Richard held up his hand. I'll do it. You'll write the letters? I asked. Yes, I'll write them. He finally looked at me. I'm sorry, Helen. I know it doesn't matter now. I know it's too late, but I am sorry, for all of it. I didn't say anything. There was nothing left to say. Sorry didn't give me back 38 years. Sorry didn't give his daughters their childhood. Sorry was just a word. We signed the preliminary agreement. Patricia said it would take 6 weeks to finalize everything. In the meantime, Richard would move out of Dorothy's house and I would stay. He would begin monthly pension payments immediately. The house transfer would happen after the divorce was final. When we left the building, Patricia turned to me. You did well in there. Staying quiet. Letting him hang himself. I didn't trust myself to speak. Good instinct. Let me ask you something. Are you satisfied with the settlement? I thought about it, but I'm satisfied with the fight. That's usually enough. I drove home. The house was empty. Quiet. Mine, finally. Or it would be in 6 weeks. I called Laura. It's done, I said. He settled. What did you get? I told her. When I got to the part about the letters, she went quiet. He's really going to write to us? He said he would. I don't know if I want to read it. What could he possibly say that would matter? Maybe nothing. But maybe someday you'll want to know that he acknowledged the truth, even if it was 40 years too late. Did you forgive him? She asked. No. Are you going to? I don't know. Maybe someday. But not today. Good, she said. He doesn't deserve it today. We hung up. I sat in the kitchen and made tea, looked around at the house that would finally be legally mine, and I thought, this is what freedom looks like. Not happiness, not peace, just the absence of lies. It was enough. For now, it was enough. 6 months after the deposition, the divorce was final. I was 66 years old, newly single, living in a house that finally had my name on the deed. The first thing I did was paint the living room, sage green. Dorothy had always hated green. Graduate school was harder than I expected. Not the coursework. That was challenging but manageable. It was being surrounded by people half my age who looked at me like I was someone's grandmother who'd wandered into the wrong building. But Laura was there, and that helped. She treated me like any other student, pushed me when I needed pushing, praised me when I earned it. I published my second paper in the Journal of Family Studies, Intergenerational Patterns of Abandonment, a case study update. It was a follow-up to my undergraduate thesis, but this time I wasn't writing about anonymous subjects. With Laura, Sarah, and Jennifer's permission, I used their real names, their real stories, and my own. The paper got attention, more than I expected. A reporter from the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel called asking for an interview. I said no, but then Laura called and said maybe I should reconsider. Why? I asked. The settlement has a confidentiality clause, which allows you to discuss facts already in the public record. Your paper is published, the divorce is finalized, court documents are accessible. You're not violating anything by talking about your own experience. I thought about it, called Patricia. She confirmed Laura was right, so I did the interview. The article ran 2 weeks later. The 65-year-old student who uncovered her husband's secret past. It was fair, factual, included Richard's attorney's statement that he regretted past mistakes and was working to make amends. But it also included quotes from me, from Laura, from Sarah and Jennifer. 4 women telling 4 versions of the same story. A man who ran from responsibility and lied about it for decades. The article went viral. People magazine picked it up. Then Good Morning America called. I said no to television. But I said yes to a speaking invitation from the National Association of Social Workers Conference. I talked for 30 minutes about hidden trauma, late-life education, and the importance of truth-telling. When I finished, the room stood and applauded for 2 minutes. Richard sent an email 3 days later. Subject line, "Please stop." I didn't open it. Just forwarded it to Patricia with a note. "Is this harassment?" She replied, "Borderline. Save it. Don't respond." I didn't. Laura invited me to Thanksgiving dinner that year. Her house, her cooking, with Sarah and Jennifer flying in from Portland and Denver. "You're family now," she said, "whether you like it or not." I brought wine and homemade rolls. When I arrived, Sarah was already there, helping Laura with the turkey. Jennifer showed up an hour later with her new girlfriend, a woman named Carolyn who taught chemistry and made terrible puns. We ate around Laura's dining table, 4 women and Carolyn, talking and laughing and telling stories about the year we'd survived. Sarah's kids were with their father for the holiday, so it was just us. No buffer, no pretense, just honesty. "I got a letter from him," Jennifer said over dessert. 3 pages, single-spaced, mostly excuses. But at the end, he said he was proud of the woman I'd become, even though he had nothing to do with it. "That's something, I guess," Sarah said. She'd gotten a letter, too. Shorter, more apologetic. He asked if we could meet for coffee someday. I haven't responded. Laura had framed her letter, hung it on the wall of her office next to her diplomas. "Not because I treasure it," she explained when I asked, "but because I want to remember that I was right, that he did know who I was, that he did abandon me on purpose, that it wasn't in my head." We moved to the living room, drank more wine, talked about the future instead of the past. Sarah was thinking about going back to school, nursing to nurse practitioner. "I'm 42. Is that too old?" "I started my bachelor's degree at 61, I said. "You're fine." Jennifer was applying for a sabbatical to write a book, a memoir about growing up without a father and finding sisters as an adult. "I want to call it The Daughters He Forgot," she said. "Too melodramatic?" "Perfect amount of melodrama," Laura said. Carolyn asked me what I was working on next. I told her about my thesis proposal for my master's degree. Late-life identity reconstruction, women who restart after decades of subordination. "You're writing about yourself again?" Laura said. Not a question. And about a dozen other women I've interviewed. Women who went back to school at 60, 70, even 80. Women who left marriages, started businesses, changed careers. Women who decided it wasn't too late. "Is it ever too late?" Carolyn asked. "I used to think so," I said. "But now I think the only thing that's ever truly too late is yesterday." Everything else is still possible. We stayed up until 2 a.m. When I finally drove home, the house was dark and quiet. But it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt like mine. In January, I ran into Dorothy at the grocery store. We saw each other across the produce section. She looked older, smaller, more frail. I waited for her to turn away. Instead, she walked toward me. Helen, Dorothy, silence. Then, Richard is living with me now. In the guest room. He's not doing well. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? Or are you glad you destroyed him? I looked at her. Really looked at her. This woman who'd spent 38 years making me feel small. Who'd known about Richard's daughters and said nothing. Who'd helped him hide money and lie about assets. This woman who'd chosen her son's comfort over the truth. Over and over again. For 4 decades. I didn't destroy Richard, I said quietly. I just stopped protecting him from the consequences of his own choices. There's a difference. He's depressed. He barely eats. He doesn't sleep. He's given up. That's not my problem anymore, Dorothy. How can you be so cold? You were married to him for 38 years, and he lied to me for every single one of them, with your help. So forgive me if I don't feel obligated to manage his feelings now. She opened her mouth, closed it, tried again. I never liked you. Did you know that? Yes, you made it very clear. But I thought you were weak, pliable, someone who would keep him stable. I was wrong about that. About which part? That I was weak? Or that my job was to keep your son stable? Both, I suppose. She paused. He wrote letters to his daughters. Did you know that? Yes. I asked him to as part of the settlement. Laura sent hers back, unopened. Sarah responded with one sentence. Too little. Too late. Jennifer didn't respond at all. Good for them. You've turned them against him. No, Dorothy. He did that himself 40 years ago. I just made it impossible for him to pretend otherwise. She looked at me with something I'd never seen in her eyes before. Not respect, exactly. But recognition. Like she was seeing me clearly for the first time. You're different, she said. Yes, I liked you better before. I didn't. She turned and walked away. I watched her go, this tiny elderly woman who'd spent decades wielding power through her son. She looked diminished, irrelevant, and I felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not pity, just indifference. I finished my grocery shopping and went home. In March, I presented my thesis at a symposium on family trauma. The room was packed. Laura introduced me, sat in the front row. Sarah and Jennifer were there too, having flown in specifically for the event. I talked for 45 minutes about identity, reconstruction, and the possibility of change. About women who'd lived half their lives believing one thing about themselves and then discovered it was built on lies. About the process of unlearning subordination. About starting over, when starting over seems impossible. When I finished, a woman in the back row raised her hand. What would you say to someone who's afraid to leave, who's 60 or 65 or 70, and thinks it's too late to start over? I thought about it. I'd say it's terrifying. I'd say you'll feel like a fool. I'd say people will judge you and question you and tell you you're making a mistake. I'd say you'll lie awake at night wondering if you're doing the right thing. And I'd say do it anyway. Because the alternative, staying in a life built on lies, is worse than any fear. The woman nodded, wiped her eyes. Thank you. After the symposium, Laura took me to dinner. Just the two of us. A quiet Italian restaurant near campus. I'm proud of you, she said over wine. In case I haven't said that enough. You don't have to be proud of me. I'm not your mother. But you're something. Friend, maybe. Allie, co-conspirator. Co-conspirator? I like that. We talked about her research, my thesis, Sarah's decision to apply for her nurse practitioner program, Jennifer's book deal, the things we'd built from the wreckage. Do you ever regret it? Laura asked. Leaving him? Fighting the way you did? No, not even a little? Not even a little. I regret staying as long as I did. I regret believing his lies. I regret not asking harder questions. But leaving? Fighting? That I'd do again in a heartbeat. She smiled. Sarah asked me the other day if we should feel guilty for ruining his life. What did you tell her? I told her we didn't ruin his life. We just stopped letting him ruin ours. That's exactly right. We finished dinner. She drove me home. Before I got out of the car, she said, My mom would have liked you. She always said women should stick together. Protect each other. She would have appreciated what you did. For us. I did it for me too. I know. That's why it worked. I got out, walked up to my house, with my name on the deed and my furniture inside and my life happening in every room. In May, I graduated with my master's degree. Laura hooded me. Sarah and Jennifer were in the audience. When my name was called, they stood and cheered. The whole section turned to look. I didn't care. I walked across that stage, shook the president's hand, and felt something I'd never felt before. Pride. Not in being someone's wife, not in making someone else comfortable, not in being good or quiet or accommodating. Pride in being Helen, just Helen, at 66 years old, finally. After the ceremony, we took photos, the four of us. Laura, Sarah, Jennifer, and me. 4 women connected by one man's failures and our collective refusal to let those failures define us. Someone asked if we were family. Yes, Laura said. We are. That night, alone in my house, I sat at the kitchen table and wrote Richard an email. Not because he deserved it, but because I needed to say it. Richard, I don't forgive you. I don't know if I ever will, but I want you to know that leaving you was the best decision I've ever made. Not because I hate you, but because I finally learned to love myself more than I feared being alone. Your daughters are remarkable women, not because of you, in spite of you. They've built lives full of meaning and love and purpose without any help from you. You should be ashamed of what you missed. I'm finishing my master's degree this month. I'm starting a PhD program in the fall. I'm teaching undergraduate seminars. I'm writing papers that people actually read. I'm doing all of this at 66 years old, and I've never been happier. You told me once that I looked ridiculous trying to be young. You were wrong. I wasn't trying to be young. I was trying to be myself. And it turns out, myself is pretty good. Don't contact me again. We have nothing left to say to each other. Helen. I sent it, closed my laptop, went to bed. He never responded, and I never looked back. 2 years later, I defended my doctoral dissertation, Reconstructing Identity After Deception, a longitudinal study of women over 60. It was accepted with honors. They called me Dr. Mitchell at the defense. I considered changing my name, going back to my maiden name, Fletcher, but decided against it. Mitchell was part of my story now. I'd earned it through survival. Laura got a promotion to vice provost. Sarah finished her nurse practitioner degree. Jennifer's book became a bestseller. Carolyn proposed. They got married in Denver with all of us in attendance. I bought a small condo near campus, sold the house, used the money to fund a scholarship for non-traditional students over 60. Called it the Late Bloomer Fund. The first recipient was a 71-year-old woman who'd left her husband after 50 years and decided to study art history. She reminded me of myself. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Richard had a stroke. Mild. He recovered mostly. He was 74 now, living with Dorothy, who was 95 and declining rapidly. I felt nothing when I heard the news. Not satisfaction, not pity, nothing. He was someone I used to know. That was all. On the 5-year anniversary of my graduation, the day everything changed, I drove to campus, walked to the parking lot where Richard had told me I looked ridiculous, stood in the exact spot where I'd frozen, humiliated, destroyed. And I thought, thank you. Thank you for being cruel enough that I couldn't ignore it anymore. Thank you for recoiling when I tried to hug you. Thank you for being so obvious in your disgust that I finally saw you clearly. Thank you for being the catalyst for the best years of my life. I got back in my car, drove to Laura's house. She was having a backyard barbecue. Sarah and Jennifer were already there with their families. Kids running around, music playing, laughter. Helen! Jennifer waved from the deck. We're just getting started. Come eat. I walked into that backyard full of people who'd never met Richard and didn't care about him. People who knew me as Dr. Mitchell, the professor who taught late life development. The woman who'd started over at 65 and built something new from nothing. Laura handed me a glass of wine. To new beginnings, she said. To new beginnings, I echoed. We clinked glasses, and I thought, I'm 68 years old. I have a PhD. I have a career I love. I have people who see me, really see me, and value who I am. I have a life that's mine. And it's enough. It's more than enough. It's everything.